So our question is, how can a God of love allow so much suffering in the world? It's a great question. It's a big question. And we ask that question because we see so much suffering around us. And I want to acknowledge right from the start that maybe you're asking this question purely philosophically, but maybe you're asking it because you are suffering and going through something really intense and you're wanting to know, what does Christianity say about this? Well, we're going to think about what the Bible says, but it does say a huge amount about suffering, and I can't possibly cover it in just a few minutes. And therefore, I hope this will just spark something that you'll want to find out more and keep asking questions and keep investigating. I want to take you to two people in the Bible, both of whom suffered intensely and both cried out why to God. The first is a guy called Job. Now, Job was very successful, very wealthy, but he lost it all. He lost all his possessions, they were stolen, all his employees were killed, all his sons and daughters died because they were having a party in a house and the house collapsed. And he suffered bad health, he was covered in sores. So this guy was suffering intensely. And he cries out to God, God, why? Why is this happening to me? And at one point he even says to God, God, I want my time before you because this just isn't fair. It's not just. I want to plead my case to you. Now notice, will you, you've got someone in the Bible here who is struggling with suffering and who is asking exactly the questions that we ask. Why? God, I want my time before you to plead my case. This just isn't fair. Now, there's chapter after chapter of Job asking why, and then at the end of the book of Job, God answers Job. And God's answer is fascinating. Here is what God says. He says, Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm. He said, Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. And what follows is God asking loads of questions of Job, which is to highlight the fact that Job's knowledge is very limited, and Job's powers are very limited too. In other words, God is saying, Job, you are someone really without knowledge. But I do have knowledge, God is saying. Now that helps us. I mean, it doesn't answer directly the question as to why Job suffered exactly as he did. But it does say to Job, Job, don't forget God's greatness. The God of the Bible is a God who is great, who has wisdom, and who has infinite knowledge, and therefore is far greater than you and me. Now, we look at the world and we see all the suffering that we can see around us, and we think we cannot imagine a reason why God would allow this. But God is saying, I have far more knowledge than you, I'm far wiser than you, and therefore trust me that I know what I'm doing. Now, that can create a difficulty for us, because when we hear of God's greatness, the God of the Bible saying, I'm that great, we could think, well, maybe therefore God is uncaring because he's so great, he's so far beyond us. Maybe we'd struggle to relate to him. And that's where we've got to turn to the second person in the Bible who suffers and cries out why. And that is Jesus. When he died on the cross, he cried out to God, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now that's really significant because the New Testament says that Jesus is God. That therefore Christianity is saying God himself came into this world and suffered with us and suffered for us. And therefore, again, though that doesn't answer all your questions as to why you're suffering as you are or why the world is the way it is, it at least says this: God cares. He really cares. He loves us so much he came into the world and suffered and died. And it points us to the answer for suffering that God gives, which is him suffering on our behalf. Now, you might well have a whole load more questions, but here are just a couple of thoughts for you. We need to remember God's greatness, his wisdom, his knowledge, but also we mustn't underestimate God's love for us. Now, maybe you want to find out more. There are a couple of videos I would recommend that will help you think further on this subject, and you can get in touch with us. Ask me if you want some follow-up questions after this.